Welcome to the URL as well channel. Today I will present my results in the 3 different first tournaments with set 5 and finally my predictions for the upcoming Galactic Championships. The first tournament I played in with Legends of the Force was Highlander. Highlander is an online tournament held every set with a dozen or so players participating, mostly French, though I don't think so in this particular set. In terms of skill level, it seems similar to most weekly tournaments. Some players are very solid, others are quite solid, and some are a bit unfamiliar with the game. The most unconventional rule is that each player must play a different leader. In the past, I won a third set edition of Kira Green, and Elich played on the same server, also with a third set edition with Sabine Yellow. The fourth set edition wasn't completed, although I was among the few who didn't get eliminated with a yellow wedge after 3 games and 3 wins. My biggest wins in these tournaments were 2-1 Kira against Defei with his Anakin Blue, who was ranked in the top 10 players in the world by KTOD, and a 2-0 win with Yellow Sabine against a Hantu ECL, also piloted by Defei. Returning to the 5th set, I choose Reva ECL. As I said in my first video about new decks, I really like this deck, although it will probably never be tier S. This time the tournament was held in the top 16 format. In the first round I managed to defeat Kylo Yellow 2-0. Twice I managed to quickly finish the base before my opponent could threaten me with Kylo. In the second round I won 2-1 against Kylo with set 2 Red Force base. This turned out to open up a lot of new possibilities, such as the new Savage, which is a 9-6 for 6, and if you have Force you don't get 9 damage to the base when defeated. And it was Savage who finished me off in the second game. In the semifinals I faced Kylo Data Vault. While this matchup was slightly positive for me in the first 2 matches, this one was obviously negative. Against Kylo Data Vault I know I had no hope of winning very quickly because of the high HP, ramp and many good cards to stabilize the situation. And after the stabilization, Kylo is obviously a much stronger leader than Reva, and blue-green is slightly stronger than red-green. And unfortunately, in the first game I managed to win quickly even before Kylo came out, but in the 2 next games he managed to drag the game out long enough. In the second I even came close because I had Devastator and dealt 28 damage on my last move. But then my opponent finished me off with Anakin, whom he cleverly shielded and simultaneously killed my Sentinel with Vigilance. When I thought about that, what best of 3 would look like if Kira were instead of Kylo, I started to think that maybe even the matchup against Sabine would be a bit better, as current testing shows that the matchup is around 60% for Sabine and 14% for Reva. The second tournament is another TTI season. I know I would likely face more dangerous players and decks here, so I choose a stronger deck than Reva, namely ECL Krennic as my current strongest option besides Kira, as I would still have plenty of time to play with her locally. This time the format is a bit different because there are only 4 players and everyone plays everyone. In the first round I faced Quinlan. This version was supposed to be more aggressive on paper, with a Quinlan unit instead of Kira unit without sparks but with swords. I didn't see swords in the Aether game and they could have complicated matters significantly. Quinlan's unit didn't help because I had a ramp and Pershing in both games, so it was a pretty easy 2-0. In the second round I faced Hantu, a blue force base. In this matchup I would have felt more confident with Kira, and besides Han obviously got a lot of new cards, so I know it would be tough. In one game I didn't get a single card for 7 or 8, so despite desperate defense I lost with 10 resources. But in the other 2 I draw quite well and didn't make any significant mistakes, so the classic strength of blue-green villains with the new Vader was enough to defeat Han Blue with the new toys, and I won 2-1. So at this point I am almost certain of playing in the finals, but I am also certain that it will be another clash with Han Blue, so it will certainly be a long and complicated final. So I wouldn't be surprised if I lost due to the single mistake that tipped the scales in my opponent's favor. And chronologically, the third one was the first local weekly tournament where, due to a lack of new cards, I went with Yellow Wedge. I defeated 2 Force decks, Han Blue and Qui-Gon Green, only to face a difficult matchup in the form of Pietret. Qui-Gon is a fairly easy matchup, but in the second game he had all the answers he needed to my specific draws. The race with Han wasn't easy, but in the end there were no surprise, and he succeeded twice and only failed once. My opponent had 2 Ogdobogdos on the first turn, but I had 2 Legendary Falcon with Pilot on the second. In the late game, Grogu and Trench and Poe slowed me down, and Luke finished me off. I didn't draw well enough to win the game. The third game was against Pietret. I lost the first game in a rather classic situation in this matchup. I was a few damage late, and the opponent already had Devastator on who played Barrage and Planetary Bombardment, repeatedly killing all my units. The second game was a classic win in this matchup. Piet didn't draw a ramp, and I drew so well that the opponent found himself in a practically losing position already in the fourth round. In the third game, the opponent again didn't have a ramp. On turn 4, the situation wasn't clear yet, so he played an invisible hand, but I responded with a waylay and played another ship. The opponent didn't have a good target for the barrage, and the next turn he could only play another invisible hand, which already cleared the situation. I also drew a Surprise Strike and a Falcon. I probably would have needed these cards to win if the opponent had an opening on the ground in the first turn, where I come out with 2 pilots attacking for 2, or had ramp. And now let's move on to my predictions for the Galactic Championships. I won't shy away from specific predictions, I will simply explain why I think so. I will probably miss something, but I think that there should be at least a few accurate points. First, what decks will appear? Currently in the first tournaments with the new set, with varying options in the meta, even on Karabast, we see everywhere that Hantu will undoubtedly be the most represented deck. With blue and green, Hantu is a tier S deck, and even yellow or mono should be playable. Furthermore, we have various base variations which he can be played, force base above or below 30, and so on. How large a portion of the meta will this be? I think a range between 30–50% is most likely. As for the rest of the decks, I think Sabine, Kira, Talzin, Han1, Anakin, Kat, Quinlan, Vader Pilot and Rey are in play. This leader seems popular enough. When it comes to my picks for leaders who could surprise with a positive or very positive performance at the tournament, I'm most interested in Chancellor Palpatine, Wedge Palpatine 1 and Kylo 5. I consider all of these decks potentially very strong against New Force decks and quite strong against all Data Vault decks. Moving on to the top 8, I think there will be 2 to 4 Han-2 decks. In my opinion, the only deck besides Han that, if properly represented, could have more than one representative in the top 8 is Kira, but that depends on how many players, especially the top players, play Kira. In terms of victory, of course, some Han2 or Kira will win if they get about 5% of all decks. As for potential bans, I think they depend on the performance of Han2 and Talzin, but as you can already guess from my previous predictions, I don't think 4-stroke decks and Han2 will completely dominate the meta, so there won't be a ban, at least until the end of this set. I also compiled my fantasy competition ranking, but I don't think it's entirely accurate. Wu, I strongly believe that if he plays Kira, he will reach the top 8 and probably fight for the win. I also think that Ryan Warner, as a great expert on Yellow Sabine, will build a strong space version of this deck and could go very far, as space is a weakness of many Force decks. I'm So Humble seems like a very solid choice in the 4-point category, but as for the other choices, I don't know enough about these players to make them anything more than just picking a player I simply know is good. Regardless of whether my predictions are correct, I will gladly watch the broadcast of the Galactic Championships. Honestly, if I could, I would play PQ, but it looks like I can't for a second set in a row. But when it comes to such long and complicated tournaments, I actually prefer watching and analyzing them to playing them. Next week, the last episode before the Galactic Championships will feature finally my unpopular opinions about Star Wars Unlimited. Leave a like and subscribe, and see you soon. Bye.